You ever have a day start with the sound of bolt cutters on your front gate and end with the FBI tackling people in your backyard? Yeah, I didn't think so either until Vivian Cross and her crew of fake cops rolled up on my granddad's old cabin expecting to tear my life apart. What they didn't know was that the only criminal waiting inside was a SWAT team and not theirs. I'll never forget that metallic crunch as the gate gave way. And suddenly I realized sometimes when you think you're about to lose everything, you're actually about to win bigger than you can imagine. See, when I first inherited my grandfather Harold's 100-year-old cabin up in Pine Ridge, Colorado, I thought I'd won the lottery. Old log stone chimney, a valley full of silence, and my name on the deed. Honestly, I figured I'd sell the place and be back in Denver before winter. Free house, free life. But free has a funny way of costing you, you know what I mean? It all started feeling off the day I found Harold's death certificate stamped under investigation and a rush cremation order totally against everything he'd ever said. He wanted to be buried beside Grandma, so why the hurry to burn the evidence? That didn't sit right, and neither did the insurance policy I dug up. $2.5 million coverage for a creaky old cabin worth maybe $300K, on a good day upgraded just before he died. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some weird paperwork. Something stank. I did what any stubborn carpenter would: check the basement. What I found would have made the FBI jealous: hidden surveillance gear, live feeds on every inch of Pine Ridge, and a business card: Agent Rodriguez, FBI Insurance Fraud Division. Next to it, a note from Harold: Ethan, if anything happens to me, call this agent. Operation Pine Trap. The cabin is bait. Then I found his final video. I'll never shake his words. Ethan, if you're watching this, it means my plan worked. But it also means Vivian probably killed me to get to you. She's not just a power-hungry HOA president. She's a professional insurance killer. I made this place irresistible to her. You're the next target. That's the moment it went from mystery to war. Harold had built a dossier on Vivian. Her method was always the same: target isolated insured homes, harass the owner with violations until they're desperate, then stage an accident. The insurance payouts were massive. The deaths were always just suspicious enough to go unsolved. And here I was, the last fly in her web. You ever read a note from your dead grandfather blaming himself for a monster he tried to help once? Yeah, Harold had caught Vivian scamming years ago, but instead of jail, he gave her a second chance. She disappeared, then came back with a vengeance, a new name and a trail of bodies. The guilt pushed him to try and stop her. But now I was left holding the bag, looking at the faces of families she'd wiped out for a payout. I should have run, but you can't unsee that kind of evil. Instead, I called Agent Smith, gave her the code words Harold had left. Her answer: Mr. Brooks, we've been waiting for your call. Your grandfather was building a case to bring down the biggest insurance fraud ring in Western history, but you need to stay right where you are. I hung up knowing I was bait in a trap that had been set years before I even knew what was going on. Vivian showed up 5 days later looking like she'd stepped off a lawyer's billboard heels, clicking suit sharper than a new knife folder, thick enough to choke a horse. So, sorry for your loss, Mr. Brooks, she cooed, and then slammed me with $100,000 worth of urgent fire safety violations. I was supposed to go broke or give up. But I had Harold's playbook, and I was ready for every dirty trick she threw my way. When I took her evidence to Sheriff Cole Cross, he looked at me with these cold, blue-green eyes I recognized from Vivian herself. That's when it clicked, brother and sister. A family business. Every town Vivian targeted, Cole ended up sheriff, protecting the scams, silencing anyone who asked questions. It was a mobile operation. Property burns, insurance pays, nobody's the wiser. My luck changed when I met Dorothy Hayes, the sharpest 78-year-old I'd ever known. She'd smelled a rat the minute Vivian showed up, and she'd kept her own notes on every weird incident. Together we pieced it all out, and when Dorothy introduced me to Rebecca Foster, an investigative reporter from Denver who'd been working with Harold, the real plan came into focus. The three of us spent night after night lining up the evidence. 15 years, 4 states, dozens of families burned out, millions stolen. But now we had the whole story, and Rebecca was ready to blow the lid off. The problem: Vivian and Cole realized someone was getting close, and that's when things got ugly. Monday morning, just as dawn hit the pines, Cole and his deputies busted down my door. They dragged me out in cuffs, conspiracy, arson, insurance fraud, and showed off evidence they'd planted: accelerants, forged insurance requests, even a crazy manifesto. $2 million bail for a small-town carpenter. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so terrifying. But while I sat in a cell, Rebecca dropped the bomb. Her story blew up FBI forensics murder by poison surveillance footage audio of Cole coaching his deputies to plant evidence. Suddenly, the whole world was watching Pine Ridge. Witnesses came out of the woodwork. Bank managers, insurance adjusters, even Margaret Walsh, Vivian's biggest supporter, publicly apologized for ever trusting her. Rico Martinez, the pro arsonist, realized his days were numbered and flipped photos, records, everything. Suddenly, the FBI had the smoking gun. The state attorney general launched an investigation. Insurance companies froze claims the governor sent in federal oversight. 3 days after my arrest, the town crowdfunded my bail, and I walked out into a sea of neighbors holding signs demanding justice for Harold. For the first time, Vivian looked scared. Now here's where it gets wild. With her empire crumbling, Vivian and Cole went all in, planned to torch Pine Ridge, frame it on environmental activists, and vanish to Mexico. But this time we were ready. Rico wore a wire, the FBI set the trap, and the whole town evacuated under the pretense of investigation. I stayed in the cabin playing the sitting duck. Saturday night, 1:45 a.m. Rico showed up with gasoline and timing devices, everything Vivian had planned. At 2:16 sharp, FBI floodlights turned night into day. Agents came pouring out of the woods, and the whole thing was streamed live to millions online. Vivian's cronies were caught red-handed, her fake investigators cuffed, and Rico's recordings made sure there was no escaping what she'd done. Vivian herself tried to run SUV with fake plates hiking through the woods, but the feds were one step ahead. K-9 units found her hiding in a ravine. In her command post, they found millions in cash plans for dozens of other communities and enough evidence to bury her for good. At the same time, FBI teams raided cross-family operations in 5 states, 67 more arrests. The justice system finally caught up. In court, the story became national news. Vivian was hit with murder, racketeering, insurance fraud, conspiracy, facing the rest of her life in a cell. Her breakdown in custody was legendary. Facing the death penalty, she started talking, admitted to 23 murders, detailed bribes, shell companies, even connections to international cartels. The whole operation unraveled. The real heartbreak, though, came from families who'd lost everything. Maria Santos, Robert White's daughter, the Hendersons, they all told their stories in court. The judge's words still ring in my ears. You turned trust into a weapon for predatory capitalism. Life without parole. Vivian collapsed, screaming, blaming everyone but herself. Cole, her brother, got his own cell, and Pine Ridge finally started to heal. 6 months later, Rebecca won the Pulitzer. Her documentary exposed insurance fraud rings nationwide. Dorothy became a national advocate for elder protection. Rico, after a reduced sentence, now teaches arson prevention. Me, I accidentally became an expert, testifying before Congress, training law enforcement, even founding a Center for Insurance Fraud Prevention on the site of Harold's old cabin. Pine Ridge turned into a model for transparent, corruption-free community life. Property values soared, the new HOA published everything publicly, and families who'd once lived in fear now shared stories and rebuilt. I even married Rebecca right there in Harold's Memorial Garden. Sometimes I still hear the echo of those bolt cutters and think about how close I came to being just another victim. But Harold's final lesson was simple: when you refuse to back down, even when the odds are impossible, you can change the world. Now, every time I see a family visiting the center or a neighbor standing up to corruption, I know we did more than just survive. We set a new standard for justice. So tell me, where do you draw the line between looking the other way and standing up for what's right, even when it costs everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my place? And if you want to hear about the funeral director who faked 73 deaths but got caught by one tiny mistake, well, hit that bell and I'll see you in the next wild story. Stay safe out there, because sometimes the wildest stories aren't made up. They're just real life.